Welcome, fight fans. It is Justin Perry MMA, and I'm back with another video. With the topic of today's video being striking versus wrestling. Which one is better to have as a skill set? Which one is better to have at the forefront of your skill set? Which one is better to be more adept in? And how being adept in having either one at the forefront of a fighter's skill set can affect them inside the octagon, outside the octagon, in terms of financially while they're so active, and of course how it can affect the fighter's legacy, and how it can affect them, just going forward off of that, once they retire and everything like that, how fans look at them and how they're talked, amongst other all-time greats and so forth like that. We're going to be talking about all the nuances of the sport and how just the differences in a fighter's skill set and a fighting style can completely change the landscape and the trajectory of their career. So once again, that's the topic of today's video, and if you have not already done so, if you could subscribe to the channel and like the video. Ladies and gentlemen, starting off with striking on the pros, we have, it's beloved by everyone. It's a fan favorite. Everyone loves the guys who just stand and bang. Everyone loves the guys who get to it, who get bloody and everything, who just go for it, whether it's kickboxing, taekwondo, karate, Muay Thai, capoeira. Everyone loves stand-up. It's, even the numbers show it, pay-per-view numbers show it, even local amateur fights show it. Even in the local circuits, guys who typically stand and bang, they typically get put on cards more often. Same thing within the professional promotions. Guys who typically stand and bang usually get main event spots first. They usually get a little bit of a bone. They usually get bonuses, fight of the night, performance of the night, knockout of the night. They usually get treated better when it comes to rankings and everything like that. And just in general, fight fans love fights. Fights primarily are standing up, so everyone likes that. They typically get paid more too because they're more exciting and they draw a bigger crowd. They draw more fans. They typically get bigger endorsement deals, and they typically just get more brand deals in general. So they get paid more throughout their career. More fame equals more fortune. It's easier to get title shots because they bring in more pay-per-view numbers. They bring in more fans. So the promotions will probably give them more favorable matchups in terms of, instead of having to fight 30 times to, get a ranked opponent, maybe after like 1 or 2 or 3 fights, they'll get a ranked opponent in the top 15 or top 10, maybe even top 5, depending how stuff goes, because everything is situational. Maybe someone pulls out. You guys get the gist, right? And everyone knows strikers. So look at Khabib. Khabib and Conor is a prime example of that. Khabib, when he fought Conor, millions of pay-per-views. When Khabib didn't fight Conor, who was known as like a legendary striker, he can't really crack like 800, 900, like 800K pay-per-view buys. I think his fight with Dustin Poirier did like 6 or 700K. Justin Gaethje like 600, 700K too. And the most famous of all athletes, of all fighters, are strikers. Except with the exception of Khabib, who you could argue was made famous by Conor McGregor, the most famous fighters, the most highly talked about fighters are always strikers, right? Now, but going into some of the cons of striking, we have, it's a lot harder to master than wrestling because there are so many different nuances to the game. You gas out faster. You're way more prone to injuries, and you have a shorter career lifespan too. Like, your shelf lifespan is a lot shorter due to the fact that you take a lot more damage, whether it's from elbows, knees, the legs, punches, whatever. So you do have to be more careful. It's a lot harder to master. It means a lot more when someone says, "Oh, you're a legendary striker," than you are a legendary wrestler. However, with that being said, there's a saying that I say where I always say that striking gets you paid, wrestling gets you W's. Wrestling gets you wins, striking gets you fame, striking gets you money. And what I mean by that is obviously like how I articulated earlier, how when you're a striker, you get more endorsements, you get more brand deals, so you get a lot more money. You probably get a title shot faster, which you could potentially get pay-per-view points depending on how you negotiate your contract. You know what I'm saying? Whereas if you're wrestling, if you're grappling, you can more so guarantee a win, because going into the wrestling side of it, the pros in wrestling, they typically have great cardio because of how taxing it is. So when you're fighting someone who's a great wrestler, you automatically know for the most part they have great cardio. They tend to have longer career spans too, because they typically take less damage due to the fact that they're not exchanging blows all the time. And when someone's in a top mount position, a dominant position, when wrestling top mount, they typically do not take a lot of damage. They take less damage. You know what I'm saying? Wrestlers have a very high win percentage because when you're overly dominant in wrestling, it shows. You take less damage. You're able to do ground and pound, And when we have wrestlers versus strikers, the wrestlers usually win. The wrestlers usually do the best. However, this also comes with a major flip side. Whereas when we see like the most dominant wrestlers, the most specialized wrestlers, in Habib and Ben Askren and the likes of them, they tend to have very subpar striking that's usually reliant on the fact that their threat of a takedown is so immense. Like with Habib, the reason, well, Habib more so because he was dominant champion, of course, but his threat of a takedown was so immense that even the legendary strikers that he had facing Dustin Poirier and Conor McGregor and Justin Gaethje, not to a lesser degree, but Justin Gaethje still, he's still a bona fide stud. You have to keep your hands down to try, block the takedown, which leaves your upper body and your head exposed to strike. So, of course, you could say that, oh, that leads into striking, but is it pure striking? No, which is why I sort of have it in two separate categories. You know what I'm saying? Wrestlers are typically not fan favorites, so you typically don't see them getting a lot of brand deals, a lot of brand endorsement deals, unless they're just overly dominant like Habib. And even then, Habib really carves his own lane, so it's not like, if you look at fighters like Derek Brunson, no one's lining up to watch a Derek Brunson fight. If you watch any real main heavyweights right now outside of Francis and Stipe and Cyril Gane, they're all for the most part wrestlers. They all wrestle dirty boxing. No one really shows up to see them, no one really shows up to watch them fight. They're not really fan favorites, and they can't really sell fights. And nobody wants to fight a wrestler because a lot of fighters think that they're boring. A lot of fighters aren't trying to deal with all that because not only are they risking losing a match, but they're risking losing it in a major way. And leverage is everything when you're negotiating your contract. So no one wants to lose to a wrestler. If you're gonna lose a fight, someone wants to lose in just a war. You could potentially get a fight of the night, performance of the night bonus, an extra 100 G's, maybe a fight of the year. You can get an award from the UFC, and et cetera, et cetera. There's just a lot more bonuses that come from just being a striker in a stand-up game than there are to being a wrestler. So with all that being said, actually, hold up. Before I even get down to the verdict, Usman is a prime example of this, right? He was known as a grappler. He was known as a wrestler. But then what happened as he transitioned to his striking, where we saw in his Kobe Covington, Gilbert Burns, and his two defenses against Jorge Masvidal, we saw him lean more into his striking. And what happened? His popularity shot up. Although you could say that he stole Jorge Masvidal's fan base, Usman's popularity still skyrocketed when he started knocking people out, when he started getting stoppages. You know what I'm saying? So with that being said, you can see how it's happening. Even he himself has noticed it in some interviews. He was like, yeah, when I started stopping these guys and putting the hands on them, I noticed that's when I started getting my respect. Hence why he said after the Gilbert Burns fight, put some respect on my name. It goes hand in hand. The fans started to respect him more because they're like, oh, you can actually fight. You can actually show that you're versed in mixed martial arts, not just grappling. So it goes hand in hand, and he's a perfect example of that. So with all that being said, if I had to tell someone which one to pick, I would tell them to pick striking, because of course you want a long shelf life, but your window in your prime in such an injury-ridden sport is only so long. So I would say focus on the striking. It gets you paid, it gets you famous, and at the end of the day, it will get you signed faster. So once again, the winner is striking over wrestling. These are my opinions, these are my thoughts, but feel free to leave your comments and suggestions down in the box below on what you think is better, if someone has to be versed or adept in just one, and comment down below why you think so. And I'll catch y'all on the next one. Peace.